Hello, I am Josh from Sirus. Today I am a robot. Hi, my name's Josh. I'm the primary producer for a band called Sirus. We're like an electro-industrial sort of deal, and I played shows in Melbourne and overseas. And yeah, this is my studio. This is my dog Midi.
Cool.
Crazy dog. Sirus has kind of been my only project since forever, as my own music that I've been writing has always been that, but it's gone through so many changes. It started off as a trance music project, so real kind of like late 90s dance music, and it's kind of progressed from there into something that sounded more like breakbeat, and then it kind of ended up sounding more like kind of German industrial music. And that's closer to what it sounds like now, although we've got lots of influences from EDM and electro house and that sort of thing. But I've been experimenting with electronic music since I was about 14, and started taking it seriously when I left high school. My influences sort of range from modern EDM, drum and bass, dubstep, kind of Skrillex sort of stuff, all the way to like Dead Can Dance and like Lorena McKennitt and some sort of like cinematic folk music, or like Middle Eastern sort of themed like atmospheric tracks. Yeah, from that sort of really kind of chilled out atmospheric end all the way to like noisier and that kind of like drum and bassy sort of sound. Normally when I start working on a track, it'll come from like a little sound that I've made in another track, and it's really cool, but it doesn't match what I'm working on, so I'll sort of put that aside. I'll come back to it later, and then one day, I'll wake up and I'll go, oh, I really like this little sound or this little riff or something, and I'll start making music around it, and usually it's a bass sound or like a string sound or something. It's not lyrical, because I do vocals and lyrics as well, but that always comes later. It comes on top. The sound of the music and the kind of timbre is the most important sort of sound, the sort of aspect to it, I guess. And so I'll start with a sound that will be either the focus or will be like a side thing, and almost all of the time, by the time I've built the track up, that sound is gone. So when I'm building up a soundscape, or multiple instruments that I'm going to use in a song, I'll have a patch, a synthesizer patch that has a particular sound with no melody, and it'll sound good on any note that I hit on my MIDI keyboard, and I'll sort of work up a little melody of that and loop it for only like 2 bars. And then from there, I'll start adding strings and things. And once I've got a progression, I usually come back and work on that melody a little bit more and make it match my string progression. I can use a range of instruments, and I can compose with an entire orchestra, and I can, I can have big fat choirs, and I can have a range of all of these like really expensive sounds. I can compose like a real composer is supposed to, well, in my opinion, and I can do all this without having to hire a soundstage and an orchestra and a choir and a guitarist and all of this stuff. And whilst all of those positions in music is totally still valid, I think it's cool to be able to have a vision and as a singular entity, like completely create that vision and that sound, and not have to spend $1 million to do it. So here I have some sounds of a, what is this thing? It's an oud, isn't it? No, it's not. What is it? Yes, it's an oud. I was right the first time. So it's like a stringed instrument. I've got a nice reverb on there. So I've written like a very guitar plucky kind of sounding melody with multiple velocity layers, so it kind of sounds like a real played instrument, even though it's not. But I've gotten quite good at faking that. And I think there are a lot of composers out there that wouldn't have gotten their big breaks. People that now work in, film composition that wouldn't have gotten their big breaks if it wasn't for the electronic side of things and, a way of producing the sounds that they wanted without having to have money in their pocket first. I've got a pretty vivid imagination when it comes to listening to music, and I like things that seem very cinematic and sort of counter to what I initially was listening to, which was very cheesy. This is very, very different. This is something that I could imagine would be, alongside a moving image. And with that in mind, I started, getting into darker, more moody, moving kind of music, something with a bit of soul. And since I'm kind of a fan of dark cinema as well, the music kind of started to gravitate towards that. So I started making music that I felt like could be involved to some pretty like nasty looking moving images, I guess you might say. And with that's kind of my focus, is to blend that kind of feeling with something that's a little bit more dance floor accessible, maybe even a little bit more pop accessible within reason. Every album that I've written has been a concept album. In its own way, this one definitely is, although this one's kind of more of a smorgasbord of different sounds. It's a concept album from a intellectual perspective, because it's about government surveillance and the whole thing that happened with Edward Snowden and the NSA, and we should all be wearing tinfoil hats. Okay, so I use a mixture of electronic sounds and sort of more natural sounds that come from sample packs and things that I've recorded myself to sort of make my music. So a lot of it's synthesized sounds. I'll work by like sculpting sounds on a synthesizer to make a kind of otherworldly, not very sort of real instrument-y kind of sound. And then I'll pair that with certain things like ethnic instruments and things from companies like East West that produce these symphonic composers collections for people to use on their film soundtracks and that sort of thing, all very immaculately recorded kind of stuff. I'll kind of blend those two things together with the addition of some fun recorded things with my microphone. Like there's a video on YouTube of me with an electric toothbrush and a little tin. And I've got the electric toothbrush and I'm kind of moving it around the tin, and I've got a guitar plate mic on the tin, and I'm getting this really weird kind of hovercrafty kind of big sort of sound. It'd be great actually for a science fiction movie. And I haven't chopped into that sound yet, but I've got a bank of a whole bunch of sounds like that I've recorded, and now and then I'll go through them and be like, oh, this is a very strange sound that I got by banging these two bits of metal together or something, and I'll add that. So it's a mixture of it's mixed media in a way. I like metallic things. They have a kind of, they ring out. That's the fun thing about them. I like hitting things. I like hitting things really hard to see what kind of sounds they'll make, and it kind of goes along with the attitude of the music as well. So I've hit things really hard. I've done some scraping sounds. I've done some like ringing out sounds. Then I'll put them through like various processes, like a vocoder or something, where I can combine them with other sounds and kind of add like a vowel-y, like a human vowel sound aspect to them. And suddenly you've got that you can turn something that suddenly sounded like you banging bits of metal together into something that's kind of more fluid and different. And it's fun to take something like you might use for film Foley and turn it into something musical.
Cool.
So this is the sound of me dropping keys against other keys. It's quite a kind of metallic sound. There are multiple key sounds you can hear. I've just cut into little sections inside like a little beat groove, and then I've made a really cool kind of pattern with lots of tiny little versions of it. And that I will use as a kind of cool, glitchy percussion kind of hat over the top of some kind of metal drum and bass. We've developed a sound that is very specifically ours already, and it doesn't sound like any other artist does. It's a very accessible sound to those people that like bass music, and that really puts us in a different category to those people that listen to guitar-driven industrial, for sure. They're very, very different. And I guess just honing our craft. And I, for one, just want to get out there and record more natural sounds and feed them into my crazy processors and process them more. I like to do some more field recordings. I always tell myself I'll do more field recordings, and then I never get to going out to other locations to do it. I've done a little bit of it, but I'd like to do more of that in the future. And I'd also like to try to work maybe with some solo instrumentalists on cello or something like that, duduk, some other like ethnic instruments, to try to get a kind of interesting lead sound that I haven't tried before. Yeah. The scene that I'm in at the moment is changing. I think it's kind of evolving down two very distinct paths. On one end, you've got the new school side of it, and they're happy to take electro-industrial music and that kind of German club sound and combine it with a more modern EDM influence stuff, like what we do, but maybe a little